Cleopatra VII, Thea Philopator, the father-loving goddess. Born 69 years before the birth of Christ, she would be the last active ruler of the mighty Ptolemaic dynasty. A child of both Egypt and Greece, her bloodline traced back to Ptolemy I Soter, a Macedonian general and companion of Alexander the Great. Her first language was Koine Greek. But unlike her forebears, she alone among the Ptolemaic rulers learned to speak Egyptian. Fluent in the tongues of diplomacy, philosophy, and power, Cleopatra would become more than a queen. She became a legend. After her death, Egypt would fall to Rome, and with it, the last breath of the Hellenistic world. She was the final flame of an ancient empire, extinguished, but never forgotten. Her story is not just of silk and seduction, but of strategy and survival. This is not myth. This is memory carved into the walls of time. This is the rise of Cleopatra. In the year 69 BCE, under the rising brilliance of Sirius, the star of Isis, a girl is born to Pharaoh Ptolemy, Orleats, and his queen. She is named Cleopatra. Few knew then that she would outshine both Isis and Alexander in legacy. The Ptolemaic court, a blend of Greek refinement and Egyptian ritual, watches with hope. Egypt, though rich, is politically unstable. The dynasty, once mighty, now walks a tightrope over Roman ambitions and native unrest. Unlike her siblings, Cleopatra seeks not only power, but understanding. Fluent in many languages, she masters science, politics, and history. The priests of Thoth and Greek scholars alike marvel at her memory and insight. Her mother calls her Little Isis. The palace staff whisper she is a goddess, born of both the Nile and Olympus. Even as a child, her gaze is unblinking, calculating, regal. In early 69 BC, a new star rose in Alexandria. Cleopatra VII. Born to Pharaoh Ptolemy XII, Orleats, her mother's identity remains a puzzle. Perhaps Cleopatra V or VI, possibly the same person, held the key. Young Cleopatra grew up in the Grand Palace. She received a Hellenistic Greek education, shaping her intellect. By adulthood, she commanded many tongues: Egyptian, Hebrew, Latin, and more. Her father, Ptolemy XII, relied on Roman support. When Rome annexed Cyprus, his brother committed suicide. Ptolemy XII's silence angered the people of Egypt. Amidst revolt, he and his daughter, likely Cleopatra, were exiled in 58 BC. Her older sister, Berenice IV, seized the throne with Cleopatra VI. Ptolemy XII and Cleopatra sought refuge in Roman Italy. They stayed near Rome under the protection of Pompey the Great. Seeking Roman favor, Ptolemy orchestrated the assassination of Berenice's diplomats. The hostile environment pushed them to Ephesus in Anatolia. Years later, Pompey convinced Aulus Gabinius, governor of Syria, to act. In spring 55 BC, Gabinius invaded Egypt to restore Ptolemy XII. Mark Antony, a young officer, showed mercy at Pelusion. He rescued the body of Berenice's slain husband, Archelaus. Antony later claimed to have fallen for Cleopatra then, but their affair began in 41 BC. In 52 BC, Ptolemy XII made Cleopatra his regent and joint ruler. His will named her and his son, Ptolemy XIII, joint successors. Ptolemy XII died by March 22, 51 BC. Cleopatra's first act as queen, restoring the sacred Bukis bull at Hermonthis. She may have married her young brother, Ptolemy XIII, but peace was short-lived, leading to open conflict. This was just the beginning of the legendary Cleopatra's journey. As civil war erupted between Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII, another Roman drama unfolded. Julius Caesar pursued his rival, Pompey the Great, to Egypt. Pompey sought refuge with the Ptolemies, but Ptolemy XIII's advisors saw an opportunity. They had Pompey assassinated upon his arrival. Caesar arrived shortly after. He was presented with Pompey's severed head. Caesar expressed outrage and ordered proper burial. In Alexandria, Caesar summoned both Ptolemy XIII and the exiled Cleopatra. Cleopatra famously had herself smuggled into the palace to meet him. She charmed Caesar with her intellect and ability to speak many languages. Ptolemy XIII, enraged by his sister's move, incited riots. Caesar attempted to reconcile the siblings, affirming their joint rule as per their father's will. However, Ptolemy XIII's regent, Pothinos, viewed this as a threat. He mobilized Ptolemy XIII's army against Caesar and Cleopatra. This sparked the Alexandrian War, trapping Caesar and Cleopatra in the palace. During the fierce fighting, fires spread, potentially damaging the Great Library. Cleopatra's younger sister, Arsinoe IV, escaped and joined the hostile forces. She was briefly declared queen by the rebels. Months later, in early 47 BC, Caesar's reinforcements arrived. The combined forces of Caesar and his allies defeated Ptolemy XIII's army. In the decisive Battle of the Nile, Ptolemy XIII was killed. Arsinoe IV was captured and sent to Rome, later exiled. With her rival brother gone, Caesar appointed Cleopatra and her youngest brother, Ptolemy XIV, as co-rulers. Cleopatra's relationship with Caesar grew deeper. In June 47 BC, she gave birth to a son, Caesarion, claimed to be Caesar's child. Cleopatra visited Rome twice, in 46 and 44 BC. She resided in Caesar's villa, receiving high honors, much to the chagrin of some Romans. Caesar was assassinated on the Ides of March, 44 BC. Cleopatra returned to Egypt, her hopes for Caesarion as heir dashed by Octavian's rise. A few months later, Cleopatra ordered the assassination of Ptolemy XIV, elevating her son Caesarion as her co-ruler. In the Liberator's civil war of 43 to 42 BC, Cleopatra sided with the Second Triumvirate. She developed a personal relationship with Mark Antony, one of its members, that would produce 3 children. Antony continually used his triumviral authority to the benefit of Cleopatra. He became increasingly reliant on her for funding and military aid during his eastern campaigns. The 34 BC donations of Alexandria, in which Cleopatra and her children received various titles and territories, marked a turning point. This, along with Antony's divorce of Octavian's sister Octavia, led to Octavian declaring war on Cleopatra. In 31 BC, Antony and Cleopatra led a joint naval force at Actium against Octavian's general Agrippa. They fled the battle, and Agrippa won. Octavian's forces invaded Egypt the following year. Although the couple offered military resistance, Octavian defeated their forces. This drove Mark Antony to suicide. When Cleopatra learned that Octavian intended to transport her to Rome as a prisoner, she likewise committed suicide, reportedly through poisoning. Her death in August 30 BC marked the conclusion of the Hellenistic period and the annexation of Egypt into a Roman province under Octavian. Ptolemy XII Auletes, Egypt's ruling pharaoh, willed his daughter Cleopatra VII to reign with her brother Ptolemy XIII. Cleopatra became regent for Ptolemy XII in May 52 BC, as shown by an inscription at Dendera. Her father, Ptolemy XII, died sometime between March and May of 51 BC. Cleopatra's first royal act came on March 22, 51 BC. She traveled to Hermonthis to install a new sacred Bucus bull for the god Montu. The Roman Senate was not told of Ptolemy's death until later that summer. Cleopatra may have wedded her brother Ptolemy XIII, but this is uncertain. By August 29, 51 BC, official documents listed Cleopatra as the sole ruler. This showed she had rejected her brother as co-ruler. Cleopatra immediately faced crises, food shortages and famine from devastating drought and unusually low Nile floods. The life-giving Nile, usually abundant, was reduced to a trickle. Desperate people struggled to find sustenance in the barren landscape, their faces gaunt with hunger. Attacks by armed brigands further destabilized the kingdom. A major threat came from the lawless Gabiniani, Roman soldiers left by Aulus Gabinius. Their actions undermined her authority and safety. In 50 BC, the Gabiniani tortured and murdered the sons of Roman proconsul Marcus Calpurnius Bibulus. Cleopatra, attempting to assert control, sent the culprits to Bibulus for judgment. However, Bibulus sent them back, scolding her for interfering in Roman affairs. This incident exposed the limits of her power and the volatility she faced. As a skilled administrator, Cleopatra increased tax and trade wealth to 12,000 talents annually. Yet she inherited her father's debts, owing Rome 17.5 million drachmas by 48 BC. Though Cleopatra rejected him, Ptolemy XIII kept strong allies. These included his regent and tutor Pothinos, military commander Achilles, and tutor Theodotus. Cleopatra briefly attempted an alliance with her younger brother, Ptolemy XIV. However, by October 50 BC, Ptolemy XIII had gained the upper hand. Documents began listing his name before hers, and he established his first regnal date in 40. After defeat at Pharsalus, Pompey the Great fled, seeking refuge in Egypt. Fearing his presence, Ptolemy XIII's advisors plotted. Lured by false promise near Pelusium, the great Pompey, trusting in Egyptian hospitality, was met not by allies but by betrayal. Under the scheme of Ptolemy XII's fearful advisors, led by Theodotos, he was ambushed and cruelly murdered upon landing. When Julius Caesar arrived, he was presented with Pompey's severed head, a chilling reminder of his rival's fate and a stark symbol of shifting power. Cleopatra, hearing of Caesar's presence, risked everything to meet him.
I gambled my throne, my life, for this moment.
And in that first encounter,
Her wit, her daring, unforgettable.
her brother, Ptolemy III, was enraged, inciting a riot. Caesar read Ptolemy XII's will, declaring Cleopatra and Ptolemy XIII joint rulers. But conflict erupted, leading to the siege of the palace. Reinforcements arrived, and battle was joined on the Nile. Ptolemy III was defeated and drowned while trying to escape. Cleopatra remained with Caesar, their bond deepening.
Our son Caesarion, a future king, a symbol of our alliance.
After Caesar's assassination, the world shifted.
His legacy lives on in our son. Egypt must look to its future.
Cleopatra returned to Egypt, making Caesarion her co-ruler. To secure her position, Cleopatra ordered the assassination of her brother and co-ruler, Ptolemy XIV. Rome's chaos led to the Second Triumvirate, Octavian, Antony, and Lepidus. Both Caesar's killers and his loyalists sought Cleopatra's aid. She chose the loyalists, but fate intervened when her legions were captured and her fleet battered by a storm. After Antony's victory at Philippi, Rome was divided. Octavian controlled the west, Antony the east. Now in Tarsus, Antony summoned the Queen of Egypt. Cleopatra's arrival was legendary. Sailing up the Kidnos on her magnificent barge, she presented herself as the goddess Aphrodite, meeting Antony as Dionysus, signaling a new era. Beyond the spectacle, she used the meeting to clear her name and secure deadly favors, including the execution of her rival sister Arsinoe and the handover of a rebellious governor. Cleopatra then invited Antony to Egypt. He accepted, finding a lavish welcome in Alexandria, a welcome free from Rome's political burdens. Their time together solidified a bond, a partnership of love and ambition. Cleopatra sought more heirs to secure her dynasty, and Antony sought support and the restoration of former Ptolemaic lands under her control. Even after Antony left Egypt to face Parthian threats, their connection endured. By the end of 40 BC, Cleopatra gave birth to twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, named for the sun and moon, symbols of their shared vision. Meanwhile, political turmoil erupted in Rome, instigated by Antony's wife Fulvia. Though she perished, her actions led to a temporary reconciliation between Octavian and Antony at Brundisium. The agreement at Brundisium solidified Antony's control of the East, but required him to marry Octavian's sister, Octavia, a rival for Cleopatra. Later that year, Cleopatra received Herod of Judea, a refugee. He later became king under Roman favor, a position that put him at odds with the queen's territorial ambitions. Years passed. As Antony prepared for a renewed war against the Parthians, he summoned Cleopatra to Antioch. She arrived, bringing their young twins. In return for her crucial financial support, Antony enlarged Cleopatra's realm, granting her vast former Ptolemaic territories across the Levant and North Africa. Octavian seized upon this, portraying Antony as neglecting Rome for a foreign queen and elevating his own sister and wife to publicly rival Cleopatra's status. Cleopatra joined Antony for the initial stages of his subsequent Parthian campaign. It proved a disaster. She met his battered forces with aid before they returned together to Egypt. Back in Alexandria, Cleopatra gave birth to their third child, Ptolemy Philadelphus, named in hope of restoring the kingdom's former glory. In 33 BC, Octavian attacked Antony in the Senate, calling him a slave to Cleopatra and accusing her of taking Roman land. Antony countered by declaring Caesarion the true heir of Julius Caesar, challenging Octavian's claim. Antonian consuls elected in 32 BC condemned Octavian, leading him to enter the Senate with guards and make accusations of his own. Intimidated, over 200 senators fled Rome to join Antony, who established his own counter-senate. Antony relied on Cleopatra for support. In Ephesus in 32 BC, she provided 200 ships to his fleet of 800. Some Romans urged Antony to exclude Cleopatra from the military effort to counter Octavian's propaganda. But Cleopatra insisted on staying, believing she could best defend Egypt by blocking Octavian in Greece. Her insistence led to the defection of prominent Romans like Domitius Ahenobarbus and Munatius Plancus. In Samos and Athens in 32 BC, Cleopatra was well received, and she persuaded Antony to officially divorce Octavia. Munatius Plancus then advised Octavian to seize Antony's will from the Vestal Virgins in Rome, a violation of sacred law. Octavian publicly read selected parts of the will, highlighting Caesarion as heir, the donations of Alexandria, Antony's wish to be buried in Egypt, and Alexandria as a new capital. This powerful propaganda, combined with Octavian becoming consul in 31 BC, gave him cause for war. Rome declared war on Cleopatra, not Antony, framing it as a foreign conflict to avoid the label of civil war. Antony and Cleopatra had more troops and ships, but Octavian's navy was more professional. Antony wanted to attack Italy, but Cleopatra, focused on Egypt's defense, insisted they block Octavian in Greece. They lost allies like Herod of Judea, who used an earthquake as an excuse not to join, and Malichus I of Nabatea. Despite calls to abandon the naval fight, Cleopatra urged for a confrontation at sea to protect Egypt. On September 2nd, 31 BC, the Battle of Actium began. Cleopatra commanded 60 ships at the rear of the fleet. Antony had ordered ships to have sails for retreat or pursuit. Cleopatra used favorable winds for a strategic withdrawal to the Peloponnese. Antony followed her, boarding her ship, as they escaped the battle and headed for Tainaron. The battle continued, with massive defections to Octavian's side, sealing his victory. After Actium, Antony and Cleopatra returned to Egypt, parting ways near Paratonion. Antony sought more troops in Cyrene, while Cleopatra sailed into Alexandria, trying to present a victory. Meanwhile, Antony's governor in Cyrene, Lucius Pinarius, defected to Octavian, surrendering his legions. Devastated, Antony retreated to a reclusive cottage on Pharos Island, calling it the Timonean. Herod the Great, previously Antony's ally, met with Octavian and kept his kingship, further isolating Antony and Cleopatra. Cleopatra considered escaping to India with Caesarion, but her fleet in the Red Sea was burned by Malichus I. With escape impossible, Cleopatra prepared Caesarion for rule and sent envoys to negotiate with Octavian. She offered Octavian gifts and asked that her children inherit Egypt, and Antony live in exile. Octavian sent his diplomat Thyrsos, whom Antony had flogged and sent back when he suspected foul play. Octavian invaded Egypt in the spring of 30 BC, swiftly taking Pelusium and advancing on Alexandria. Though Antony won a small victory, his fleet and cavalry soon surrendered to Octavian on August 1st. Cleopatra hid in her tomb, sending word to Antony that she had died. In despair, Antony fatally stabbed himself, dying at age 53. According to Plutarch, the dying Antony was brought to Cleopatra at her tomb. Octavian's man, Proculeius, infiltrated her tomb to prevent her immolating herself with her treasures. Cleopatra was allowed to bury Antony before being taken to the palace. She met with Octavian, stating clearly, "I will not be led in a triumph." Learning Octavian planned to take her to Rome, she prepared for suicide to avoid being paraded. She died in August 30 BC at age 39, though the exact method remains debated. Her servants, Arias and Charmian, also took their own lives to accompany her. Octavian had her buried beside Antony in her tomb. Caesarion, who reigned briefly, was executed by Octavian, ending the Ptolemaic dynasty. Egypt was annexed by Rome, marking the end of the Hellenistic age. Octavian, later Augustus, became the first Roman emperor, personally controlling Egypt.
Cleopatra VII ruled Egypt as a near-absolute monarch, modeling her authority after the powerful Macedonian kings who came before her. Inheriting a tradition of centralized power, she was the sole lawgiver, deeply involved in the administrative heart of her kingdom. Her decrees included granting significant tax exemptions, even for scholars at the renowned Library of Alexandria. As the chief religious authority, she meticulously performed vital rites for both ancient Egyptian and Greek deities to maintain cosmic harmony. Ptolemaic society was legally stratified between Greeks and Egyptians, centered in diverse cities like Alexandria, Naucratis, and Ptolemy. Yet, cultural blending was common, and native Egyptians could adopt Greek customs to alter their social standing. Upper administration was dominated by Greek elites, but native Egyptians also held significant roles as regional governors. Even the military evolved. Egyptians, initially excluded as clerics, returned as crucial phalangite soldiers by the 3rd century BC. Controlling the fertile lands along the Nile, the state exerted tight supervision over Egypt's agricultural economy. This control extended to high tariffs, state monopolies on goods like vegetable oil, and enforced price controls. However, challenges like widespread corruption and worker strikes often tested the central authority. Like her father, Cleopatra faced financial troubles, necessitating the debasement of Ptolemaic coinage. Coins bearing her distinctive image and symbols of Isis were minted and circulated throughout her vast territories. Remarkably, joint coins with Mark Antony allowed a foreign queen's portrait to appear on Roman currency for the first time. Cleopatra initiated extensive and ambitious building programs, blending Greek, Roman, and Egyptian architectural styles. These projects included repairing the gymnasium and commissioning the construction of a synagogue in Alexandria. Temple construction and decoration continued at significant sites like Dendera, Hermonthis, and Edfu. Reliefs and statues within these temples often feature Cleopatra and her son Caesarion alongside revered Egyptian deities. At Hermonthis, specific reliefs chronicled Caesarion's divine birth, linking Julius Caesar to the deity Amun-Ra. And at the Temple of Edfu, 2 grand statues of the falcon god Horus stood guard over a miniature figure of Caesarion. Her critical political alliances with powerful Romans, particularly Mark Antony, were pivotal moments. Ultimately, her remarkable reign met its conclusion with the ascendance of Octavian, signaling the end of the Ptolemaic kingdom. Cleopatra's complex and enduring legacy is a testament to a queen who fiercely navigated a world of shifting powers and profound cultural change.